supposed to speak last week, but she deferred because there were so many candidates. So she's back tonight, so we're going to give her a little extra time. Heidi, come on and introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. Well, I'm glad to be back. I'm going to do something a little different tonight because many of you who've heard me speak already know that I have a lot of fun ad-libbing. And you probably saw it at the rally that we had with Herman Cain, and we tore it up at the American Legion the other night. And I have a lot of fun with that because I speak very passionately and from the gut. However, you probably can tell I don't take myself too seriously. You see my little baseball cards, and you'll see my push cards that are shaped like baseball diamonds. I'm a baseball mom, that's my life, and I got to stick with what I know. But tonight I'm going to do something a little different, and I told Rachel ahead of time I wanted to prepare a little bit more seriously because I'm very cognizant that I'm applying for a job. Not a very well-paying one, but nevertheless, I'm applying for a job. And to do that, I need to present to you my qualifications, talk a little bit about who I am, and earn your trust in order to earn your vote. I'm very cognizant that nowadays there are plenty of people that feel that they're entitled to a vote depending on how much money they spend or their rank within the GOP. And I've never believed that. I believe that I need to get out there among the voters and tell you who I am and why you would even want to consider voting for me. So if you'll bear with me a little bit tonight, I'm going to pass out some packets of information. There's not enough for everybody, but it's just you can share at the table. And inside you're going to find my bio, you're going to find my resume, and where I stand. Thank you very much, Rudy. Where I stand on what I feel are the important issues facing Texas today. That's all the data that you could possibly have. Some of it's on my website, some of it's right there in your hands, and I'm going to leave it in your hands till afterward, then you can ask me some questions about any of my experiences. But in the meantime, while you're looking through that, I'm going to go through the usual hows, whys, wheres, what's, that kind of thing, except I'm going to go kind of in a reverse order. I'm going to go with the why first, because I want to talk to you about where we share viewpoints. Because I believe that right now we're in a battle. The federal government long ago exceeded its constitutional boundaries. And now our republic is threatened by the bloated and abusively out of control federal government. And that has resulted from our own apathy. There can be no more compromise. So you ask why I'm running. Well, I've served my country since I was 17 years old. I first enlisted in the U.S. Army when I was 17, and I served simultaneously in ROTC in college. Upon my graduation from Marquette University with a degree in international politics, a minor in military science, and a specialty in Soviet politics, I earned my commission in the U.S. Army. From there, I went to airborne school, found out that I was probably pretty dangerously close to becoming an adrenaline junkie. And then I served the remainder of my active duty service in Germany, where I met my husband, who was a really good-looking guy in uniform. Picked him up and brought him home. We have 2 children. I have a 17-year-old son, Jonathan. He's been recruited to play baseball for United States Military Academy, West Point. He will be leaving in June, and he's received his appointment already from Congressman Ron Paul. My daughter, Eden, is 13, and I was hoping to have her here tonight because, good Lord, if you think I'll get fiery, you wait till she grows up. She'll take over. She's in theater and sports, and she's a leader in her middle school at Clear Creek Intermediate. So that's a little bit about my personal background. I'm a small business owner. I have been a political consultant on a presidential campaign for Duncan Hunter and a congressional campaign for Ilario Pantano. Both of them are veterans. I find myself really trusting that they understand the Constitution for which they've sworn an oath to protect and defend from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I trust that in them, and I hope that eventually, as you get to know me, you'll trust that in me too. Okay, I get a little uncomfortable talking about myself because when I get wound up on the issues, I'm in my wheelhouse. That's kind of where I live, and I really like to talk about issues. So just, y'all are friends here, right? We're all Tea Partiers, well, most of us. Mm-hmm. So you guys can just bear with me. All right. Folks, I really think it's going to take someone like me to help shore up what I believe is the faltering state of our state in Austin. As Rachel has already mentioned, we spent a lot of time in the Capitol this last spring with plenty of people in here. The Gonzaleses, the Bentleys, Larry Schumacher, Jay Arrington. I'm trying to see who else might have come in with us. But what we did was we trained citizen lobbyists. You know, there are hundreds and thousands of lobbyists that live full-time in Austin. And they influence the process more than you would ever want to know. They live there, they eat with these guys, they spend 24/7. We have sent people there on a part-time basis, really to keep them out of trouble. Even Governor Perry is trying to implement this model as a plan at the national level, and we have part-time legislators who go there and will tell you time and time again, as they told us, they don't have time to read everything. So they rely upon the expertise of others within their sphere of influence to tell them how to vote. And I believe we're past the point now of being able to rely on individuals with incomplete knowledge. So as citizen lobbyists, when we were there, we took our white papers. They were prepared ahead of time. We would research the legislation. We would present our issues in a white paper and hand carry that first to the governor's office, always to the governor's office, and then to the relevant legislators handling that legislation, whether it was in their committee, whether it was going to the floor for a vote, or whether they were authors or co-authors of it. We would approach them and let them know how we felt. And we would approach them in such a way that we explained to them that we represented thousands of their constituents in multiple tea parties. And our watchdog group did a great deal of research, and that's the team that is behind me if you choose to send me to represent you in Austin. It doesn't stop. They're constantly researching legislation. I would not go there alone. I would go there with a team of patriots behind me who are constantly looking at the legislation from a constitutional perspective, always looking at it from a position of how do we shrink the size of government? How do we shove government back into a constitution-sized box where it's hemmed in on all sides by the enumerated powers, and that is all, and no more. That's how our watchdogs, our Tea Party watchdogs, are looking at this legislation. We're not looking at it emotionally. We're not looking at it from a perspective of special interest. We're looking at it from what is best for Texas according to the state's rights in government, according to it by our Constitution, the federal Constitution, our U.S. Constitution, and the Texas Constitution. That's a pretty high order. When we would go in and talk to some of these legislators, senators or representatives, the blank look on their face sometimes was like, I have no idea what she's talking about. And yet they were expected to vote on that very legislation. It was appalling. This is what planted the seed where we realized, and we talked about it. I remember talking with Robert about it. I've talked countless hours about it with the Bentleys, and certainly with Rachel. We thought, Texas deserves better, and we can do better. Do you know how I know we can do better? Because we already are on our own time and our own dime. Nobody's paying us. There's nobody cracking the whip telling us we needed to go to Austin every single week to babysit our own representatives. But we did, because we're concerned that we are in a war. And it's almost like, if you talk to military families, they will say it's almost like people don't understand we're in 2 or 3 wars at a time right now because everybody goes about their lives on a regular basis. And there's a very, very small and shrinking percentage of military families that are bearing the burden of war right now. It's the same thing in our government. We are in an ideological war for the soul of our country and the state of Texas. And if we don't get it right in 2012, because I'm telling you, there are plans in place that are already rolling, gathering steam, and chugging into a momentum, that if we don't stop it now, then we deserve the government that we get.
Amen.
So, as I said, when we were there, we started looking at each other and we said, all right, the Tea Party has never before truly endorsed candidates. We were nonpartisan, bipartisan even, and we weren't going to endorse candidates. But then we realized we have a civic duty now to take a stand. We're probably the most informed, the most engaged, certainly more informed than some of our representatives. Certainly more so. Would you agree with me from when you were there? Okay. So we felt we had a civic duty now to go back and look for warriors, to look for fighters, people who were going to carry the conservative cause. And do you know why we're looking for fighters? Because the folks that are there let us down. With a 101 Republican supermajority, we got less than 40% of the entire conservative agenda even handled, looked at, or passed. 101 supermajority. We had options. We had opportunities to turn back the federal encroachment of power, to position the legislature as a bulwark against this abuse of power, and we passed. I was very disillusioned. I felt going into Austin, I'm like, all right, these are Texans. Texans are a different breed. Aren't we a different breed?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, I'm expecting some titanium in the spine. I'm expecting Texans when the DOJ sends a mid-level bureaucrat to the floor of the People's Senate in the Capitol carrying a flimsy piece of paper saying that they're going to threaten to shut down air travel in and out of Texas if we don't shut down the TSA anti-groping bill. What Texan in this room wouldn't been like, bring it, make my day?
Amen.
And guess what our senators did?
Voted.
We were there that day, and I am not exaggerating. I'm not embellishing. As one politician said, he actually does. The day that we were there, when they folded and caved like limp noodles on the TSA anti-groping bill, one of our senators locked himself in his suite of offices, refusing to come out and talk to his constituents who were outside his door asking for an audience with him, to ask him to explain his cowardice.
All right.
Locked himself in his office. That's not a Texan. That's a Chicagoan.
3 minutes.
So what I'm asking you is to send fighters, because we desperately need them. We need people to go there who are not beholden to small interest groups or high dollar interest groups, who are not bought or paid for by fellow politicians. If you think cronyism and crony capitalism is rampant in Washington, D.C. with all the insider stock trading and the tips, you've not seen anything in Austin. These guys are in each other's back pockets, and it's across parties. One of the most conservative, I literally went up to him and I was like, thank you so much, Mr. Conservative. He had a really high conservative rating. He is in bed and in business with one of the most corrupt Democrats. Happens to be Craig Island, right here in District 23. In business with him. They are business partners. So how do you expect they're going to vote? Or how are you going to expect that they're going to duke it out with each other when they are making money in the off season with each other? It can't be done. I'm telling you, these people are not saints. And what we would expect of them would be truly sainthood. So I'm asking you to look for fighters, people who are unafraid, people who are absolutely not beholden, but yet people who have already proven themselves to be engaged and invested, people that have already been in the trenches, having equipped themselves and trained themselves already. These are warriors that are veterans. You're not looking for noobs. You're not looking for guys that before they decided to file, nobody knew their names. So as Tea Partiers, we have an obligation to the rest of our citizens because you are more informed and engaged than most. You have a duty to spread the word because most of your grassroots candidates, without the big money behind them, trust me, what I'm saying here tonight alienates my own party from me.
Sounds good to me.
That's right. So what? Because I'm not going to the party with my hand out saying, oh, pretty please support me. I'll do anything you say. I'm coming straight to you. We have to pull a Sarah Palin, really. We have to go around the media. We have to go around the establishment party, go straight to the voter and say, this is what I believe. If you believe with me, vote for me. Send me there. Because I promise you that if I don't follow through on my pledges, guess who's going to smack me upside the head?
There you are.
I will.
There you go.
With 2x4s.
I don't have time for that.
There are people in this room who have committed themselves. And you ask me, well, how? How are these grassroots candidates going to go up against people with hundreds of thousands and even up to $1 million? It's because you're going to pour yourselves out too. In the Revolutionary War, there's a figure, a commonly tossed around figure, that there were 3% on the front of the battle lines in the Revolutionary War, and they were supported and fed and equipped by the 10% behind them. And then there was another 20% behind them that favored their cause but didn't get too engaged. They might show up on election day and that's it. We're lucky if we get them there to a primary. So I'm asking you, not just for myself, but for Robert and Rachel and the other grassroots candidates, be our 10%. We cannot, I promise you, we cannot do it without you. Correct me if I'm wrong, when we were all wrestling with this issue of whether we were going to run for public office, which means we render up our privacy, our schedules, our family time, and I'm not whining. Trust me, we all went into it counting the costs. We knew the battle we were going into, and we count our state and our country worthy of the sacrifice. But when we were talking with one another, we said, how are we going to do this? We've got no money, we've got no big name backers, we don't have a network, and we certainly don't have a machine. And every single one of us said, I can only do it if I've got the Tea Party boots on the ground behind me. And that means we stepped up our game. We stepped up to take a swing. We're going to go there and we are going to fight like Austin or Washington has never seen a fight before. The Democrats cannot count on support and the Republicans cannot count on just hackery, just going along to get along. They cannot count on it because we are going to be beholden to the Constitution first and to you second. So, I wanted to, am I almost done?
Almost done, sister.
All right. Okay.
I'm sure there's lots of questions.
I'm going to open it up for questions in just a second. So again, I want to go back to how, because you know what? I said I wasn't going to ad-lib, and I did anyway. All right, so we need volunteers. We need boots on the ground. We need word of mouth. We need money. And most of all, folks, we need there to be no compromise. I was in this room a couple weeks ago, and I talked to somebody who said, oh, well, I like him. He's a nice guy. We're in war. You don't send nice guys to war. You send the Marines. You send the special ops. You send people who have already been blooded and know how to fight this war. That's what it's going to take. No more Mr. Nice Guy. We don't have time for them to learn the ropes and then get sucked in. Because if they learn the ropes, guess who's teaching them the ropes? Yeah. The cronies. We've seen how it operates. We've seen it from the outside. We are absolutely bound and determined to go in there and break apart that old boy crony network. And by break apart, I mean break things. in Austin, in DC. It's called creative destruction. Things must be broken in order for us to make progress, in order for us to move forward. And in fact, that's almost a misnomer, because I'm really advocating moving backward to the roots and the intent of the founders and the framers of our Constitution. That's what I'm advocating. That's what I live my life for. It's what I've lived for since I was 17 years old, actually earlier than that when I was 12 and wanted to be the National Security Advisor. So let me read to you something, because I want to encourage my fellow grassroots with this. And it's by one of my favorite leaders, Winston Churchill. He says, never give in, never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense.
Amen.
That's what I pledge to you. If you choose to trust me with your vote and send me to Austin. One last thing before I close, and this is something that the Tea Party, we have it hanging in our boardroom where we have our weekly headquarters, at our headquarters, where we have our weekly meetings. And it is a pledge that, unspoken or spoken, we've all taken with one another. And it's found at the very bottom of the Declaration of Independence. This is our pledge to one another. With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I've pledged that to my fellow Tea Party board members, and I pledge it to you. Thank you. My name is Heidi Teese. I ask for your vote in HD 24.
Questions for Heidi? Anybody got a question for Heidi? Raise your hand if you know how many days the legislature meets in regular session.
Oh,
Robert?
I do.
Robert, how many days does the legislature meet regular session? 140. 140. And additional special sessions as needed. How often do they meet? Raise your hand if you know the answer to that.
Every other year.
Every 2 years, an odd numbered years. Okay. Questions for Heidi?
There's a lot of information in that packet. Please leave the packets on the table. You can go to the website and get it and critique it, but if you see something in there, whether it's my military experience, my firearms license, the fact that I sell guns, that always catches people's interest. Any of those things that you want to ask me about, even my positions on issues, they're all there. There's even more. I've got opinions on everything, so ask away.
Oh, I do have a question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You did great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No one? Really, all that information and no critiques, no questions.
Very well put, young lady. Very good.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your time.
Why don't you talk about the budget deficit for a moment? Are we going to have a budget deficit? 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. We have a known, planned budget shortfall coming in the 2013 legislative session. They promise that they balance the budget because they're constitutionally mandated to do so. But neither you or I would balance your family budget by kicking the can down the road on education and Medicaid, and that's what they've done.
No, why don't you talk about Austin?
It is.
That is Austin.
It's a different can, but it's
A lot of can kicking.
Okay.
She is starting.
Go ahead.
All right, so we have about a $7.1 billion shortfall on the low end, known that's going to come up on top of the regular budget issues. Susan Combs, Comptroller Susan Combs, just came out recently and conveniently mentioned that she's projecting that we're going to have, lo and behold, $7.1 billion in the rainy day fund. So our legislators are thinking that it's all covered because they think if we use emergency funds that it's counted as balancing the budget even though it's 2 years too late. And they used accounting tricks and gimmicks like saying we have 24 months of revenue and balancing it against 17 or 18 months of expenditures. You wouldn't balance your family budget that way, neither would I. It's fiscally irresponsible. And We have to have, they had opportunities to cut spending. They had billions and billions of spending that was spending cuts that were proposed that they failed to either get out of committee or pass once it came to the floor. They did you wrong. 150 legislators, 101 of them Republicans, did you wrong. So guess what they're doing? They're scrounging around for more revenue. Guess where that revenue comes from? Us. All of us. Instead of cutting spending when they had a chance, they're going to come back to you and look for more revenue. Now, they've got some options on the table. They've got possibly more in the franchise margins tax. They're going to possibly propose the dreaded and hated state income tax. Or they might just try and get gambling. They're always going to be looking for more revenue. The point is that, as Rachel said so eloquently at the American Legion the other night, and I'm going to start using it, but I'm going to give her credit.
Get your own material.
I'm going to give her credit.
She
She said very emphatically, Texas does not have a revenue
Oh, I
problem.
stole that one too. Go ahead.
Oh. We have a spending problem.
Amen.
So send people there to deal with the gosh darn problem.
Yep.
The problem is not digging into your pockets for more and finding ways to trick you into giving up more of your hard-earned money. The trick is in getting Austin to spend less than ever before. It's the only hope that we have.
Heidi and I have both gone to Texas Public Policy Foundation's legislative training classes. And these are not silly little classes. These are serious classes. The chairman of that group is Talmadge Heflin. He oversaw appropriations in 2003 when Texas had a $10 billion shortfall. Very similar to the situation we were in this last session. They solved it easily by requiring zero-based budgeting for our state agencies. Each agency goes back to zero and builds their budget. These are not hard.
No.
You just have to have the political will, the will to possibly not be reelected,
Right.
to get in their faces and say, oh yes, you will do proper accounting.
Good.
Thank you for allowing me to jump
That's
in there.
okay. What she said as far as reelection, if all you do is send us there for one session, we will break it up.
All
I mean,
right.
we will go to town. We will be on fire because that's what you're sending us there to do.